Welcome to Crown TV. Immerse yourself with a captivating audio from our stories. We provide an alternative way to read books in audio. We upload many audiobooks as possible, from bestsellers to timeless classic. Subscribe and stay tuned for new upload.
Episode 251. Is that you, Debbie? The punishment for Gideon Ambrose and Flora Ambrose is decided by family tradition. It will be implemented now, Lincoln Ambrose said. The other people knew that Lincoln took the matter with Alex's family seriously. If the punishment were delayed for a few days after the rest of the family had left the estate, they may wonder if there had been favoritism toward Alex's family, which wouldn't be conducive toward Lincoln's management. It was best to punish his parents and make an example out of them in front of everyone right away to prevent other people's censure and establish prestige. Yes, Dexter said. He hurried out of the hall, and he soon came back with 6 strong men. Everyone felt a chill at the swiftness of their movement. Dexter and the men walked towards Alex's family. Although he kept a solemn expression on his face, Nathan Ambrose was happy to watch the situation play out. When he was a child, he had seen other people being punished. Alex's family was about to be made into an example for their disobedience. His family had lost their reputation in front of the whole Ambrose family. Grandfather? Alex looked up at Lincoln and said solemnly, I'll take my parents' place. As soon as he spoke these words, everyone was surprised and began to whisper. If Alex took his parents' place, he would withstand a 15-minute attack by the Ambrose family's guards, all skilled martial artists by himself. The punishment was not for fun. It could be very painful. No, it must be your parents, Lincoln said. Grandfather, according to our family's traditions, if someone is willing to replace them, it can be allowed, Alex stated calmly. The punishment is still valid. It will not weaken the ties that bind our family together. Alex could feel his grandfather's pain at having to enforce such a strict rule, but he also understood why his grandfather could not back down. He wanted to do everything possible to bring this matter to a satisfactory conclusion, but he couldn't watch his parents suffer. Grandfather, I'll take my parents' punishment. Please, I beg you for permission. Alex firmly looked at Lincoln. You're only a child. Lincoln had a worried look in his eyes. But Alex had spoken up and offered to take his parents' place. And he was right that there was precedence for him to take his parents' place. Lincoln was forced to command Dexter. All right. The punishment falls to Alex alone. Flora and Gideon didn't want their son to take their place, and they actively tried to persuade Alex to stop. He shook his head and said frankly, I've never paid you back for all the years you took care of me. It's my turn to do something for you. Mom, Dad, don't worry. I'm in good health. It'll be nothing. Alex, you're so funny. You want to show your respect for your family in front of your grandfather. But this could be the last honorable thing you do, thought Nathan. Nathan remembered when he had been a child, a man had been punished for 30 minutes, but had fainted after 25 minutes. He had been much stronger than Alex. It would be good for him if Alex lost. Alex began to prepare for the punishment with the help of another family member. Don't move, Alex. What are you going to do? Let go of Mr. Alex. Get out of here. The scolding voices of the 4 Moon Girls were heard in the hall as they floated in to rescue Alex. Although they knew that their actions were bold, they couldn't see him be harmed. A middle-aged man standing behind Lincoln reacted quickly and blocked the 4 maidens. The man's name was Conan. He was a highly skilled martial artist who served as Lincoln's bodyguard. When Conan was 25 years old, he had already defeated several martial arts masters across the U.S. After he had become Lincoln's bodyguard at the age of 26, he had disappeared from the martial arts scene. He focused instead on protecting Lincoln every day, but his skills had not declined. After 10 years of hard work, he had perfected a technique that had made him famous. Although Conan was thin, he was solid, and his one vigorous technique helped him gain the upper hand against the Moon Maidens. But the maidens were not afraid of him, even if they could tell his skills rivaled even that of Georgina Fox, their previous master. Although the 4 women joined hands to fight together, they were still in danger of being killed by Conan's fierce style. Conan attacked Celeste with his fist and kicked Callista with his right leg. His hits sufficiently incapacitated them, so he moved on to hit the other 2 maidens with the next blow. Everyone saw how fast he moved and realized it was going to be a very short fight. They expected to see the Moon Girls all fall to the ground in the next few seconds. Celeste was trying her best to resist, but felt she was going to be defeated. Hold on! A ghost-like figure darted toward Conan. The figure's right hand reached out to grab Conan's right fist and twisted it around, shifting Conan's strength to the wrong side. At the same time, the figure pushed Celeste out of the way. Conan's right foot was kicked wide, throwing off his stance. Conan stepped back and was shocked to see that the figure who had intercepted his attack was Alex. The young man clearly had some skill. As Conan was just a bodyguard, he didn't dare to fight against a member of the Ambrose family. He immediately stopped his attack, stepping back and looking to Lincoln for instructions as what to do next. Alex had kicked his right foot very hard, and it still throbbed with pain. When Lincoln saw Alex's powerful martial arts skills, he was shocked and a little pleased. He indicated with his eyes to Conan that he should stand behind him. When he saw Conan's attack was over, Alex quickly turned his attention to the Moon Girls. Are you all right? We're okay. Thank you for saving us, Celeste said. The maidens felt very happy. That's good, Alex breathed a sigh of relief. He turned toward Lincoln, knelt and pleaded guilty. Grandfather, they're my friends, and they don't understand the Ambrose family rules. Please forgive them. I won't pursue them, but we will move on to your punishment, Lincoln said in a deep voice. He was worried about Alex. He couldn't admit it, but he was not displeased to see that his grandson had supporters who wanted to save him. Yes, Alex replied with relief. Looking at the 4 women, he said softly, My grandfather has let you go. I want to accept the punishment. Please stand to the side and don't do anything to interfere. Mr. Alex! The 4 women couldn't bear to see him attacked. No one is allowed to move. That's an order, Alex said to the maidens. They exchanged looks with one another. Each of them still wanted to fight, but they also knew it was important to obey Alex's command. Alex went to stand in front of the group of men when his phone rang. Although family events at the Ambrose estate were important affairs, everyone always kept their cell phones on and were allowed to step away and take incoming calls. It was understood that with so much business constantly going on all over the world, it was important to keep the flow of communication going smoothly, even through parties like this. But taking a phone call during a punishment like this was not usually done. Alex felt awkward about the sudden interruption and quickly took out his phone to hang it up. But when he saw that the call was from Leona, he was stunned. Why could she be calling? Is there anything left to say? What is she thinking? He thought. The phone kept ringing, echoing throughout the hall. Everyone looked around in confusion. They were worried that Alex might actually answer his phone right then and there, making Lincoln even more angry. Then, Alex did exactly that. He put the phone up to his ear and said, "Hello? Alex?" Debbie said when she heard the sound of his voice. Her heart trembled. She could hardly believe that she could hear his voice. "Sorry. I'm so sorry. I shouldn't have treated you that way. I was wrong. I don't know what I..." "Leona, you..." Alex felt his heart rising, though he was trying not to hope too hard. "I remember now. I'm not Leona, I'm Debbie. I remember everything that happened at Preston University. You saved me. We spent time together. I found the necklace. I remember that I was your girlfriend," Debbie rambled. She was overcome with emotion. Alex listened to her words over the phone, his face filled with joy. He completely forgot where he was standing. He only had one sentence in his heart and mind, repeating over and over. "Debbie remembers me," he thought. Debbie plucked up her courage and asked in a trembling voice, "Alex, do you still want to be with me?" Her heart felt uneasy as she held the phone, and her hand began to tremble slightly. Would he still care about me? She thought, thinking back to every time he had tried to reach out to her, and every time she had turned him down. Lindsay was standing next to her, giving her silent support. When she saw Debbie trembling, she hugged her and rubbed her shoulders. Alex was confused and hesitant. He wanted to believe it was true, but they had been through so much. But finally, after a few long moments, he said slowly, "Of course I want you." Hearing his words, the tears in Debbie's eyes began to fall. She cried with joy. Alex still wanted her. He hadn't given up. Lindsay hugged Debbie. Her heart was happy for them, but a sense of loss churned quietly underneath. She tried not to think about her own feelings for Alex. "Debbie, do you want me?" Alex's eyes shed 2 big tears. He was happy, but he wanted to hear her confirm her feelings. "Yes, I want you. I don't want anyone else. I just want us to be together again," she said into her phone. Episode 252, Family History. "Good. You wait for me in Washington, D.C. I'll come back to you soon." Alex realized that, even though he was overjoyed that Debbie had finally remembered him, he was still at his grandfather's birthday party, about to accept the family's punishment. He needed to stop talking on the phone and face the situation at hand. "I'll wait for you," Debbie said, and Alex hung up. "Lindsay, he wants me. He doesn't hate me. We can go back to the way how things used to be," Debbie said happily as she took Lindsay's hand. Her heart was filled with joy, and her eyes were teary. Lindsay responded with a smile, even as she tried to push away her own envious, bitter thoughts. After seeing the ecstatic look on Alex's face during the phone call, Lincoln asked, "Who were you talking to? How dare you answer your phone when you're being punished by the family?" Lincoln was very angry. He felt as though Alex had forgotten the family rules after being away for 7 years. "Yes, I understand. My apologies," Alex said. After looking at his grandfather, he felt mixed up with emotion. He knelt on the ground and said, "Grandfather, I can't give up Debbie. Please punish me." Alex's voice was quiet, but the people in the hall could still hear him and were shocked. The family ban had been lifted when Alex had given up on Debbie, but it appeared that he had changed his mind and didn't want to give her up after all. Is he trying to make Lincoln angry? The punishment will probably be worse now, they thought. Lincoln smashed his fist onto the table beside him. He looked at Alex and said angrily, "How can that girl be a part of the Ambrose family? You are an Ambrose descendant. Choosing a girlfriend is no casual matter. Your choice will affect the future of our family." Lincoln was very angry. Marriage had never been a rash decision with the Ambrose family. He was very fond of Alex and had intended to train him to be the future family leader. But Lincoln felt Alex's obsession with Debbie, who as far as he could tell was no important, was dangerous. Even if Debbie were the daughter of the Marvel family in Washington, D.C., she still did not rank highly enough to be considered a serious candidate for Alex to date, and possibly even one day marry. Gideon and Flora advised their son in a low voice. "Alex, are you confused again? We're the Ambrose family. It's impossible for us to let in a girl from an ordinary family. Just admit your mistake to your grandfather and listen to our words." Their family was in a very unfavorable situation. Bringing up Debbie again just added fuel to the fire. Alex shook his head slowly. He understood his parents' pain. But without Debbie in his life, he knew he would never be happy. To him, it was worth the risk of not becoming the head of the family. "Sorry, Grandfather, I can't give her up. Please, allow us to be together," Alex said firmly. Nathan was secretly pleased. He realized that this might be his opportunity to defeat Alex once and for all. He went to Alex and said, "You really are too small-minded. You may not know that just 2 months ago, George Ambrose, the owner of Harmony Island, betrayed our family and ran off to the Mitchells with a large amount of our information. They've used it to rob us for the past 2 months. They've gained a lot of ground, and now their rank is becoming close to ours. If anything like this happens again, the family will surpass us." The Mitchells were another family with immense hidden wealth and influence across the world. Although both families were extremely powerful, the Ambrose family was still the more powerful of the two. But if there was more family betrayal, the Mitchell family would have a chance to beat them. Alex was surprised to hear that George had betrayed his family. But this did not change his mind. He knew what he wanted to do. Seeing Alex's indifference, Lincoln was even more angry. He was disappointed that Alex's priorities had become so misaligned with the rest of the family. "We will follow the Ambrose tradition," Lincoln glared at Alex and exclaimed, "This is the most difficult period for the Ambrose family. I think we need to create a new precedent for situations like this. Those who openly oppose the head of the family's orders like this will be punished for 60 minutes. We'll start today. Dexter, did you hear me?" "Yes, I wrote it down," Dexter said as he quickly nodded. As soon as Lincoln had finished speaking, everyone in the hall gasped in shock. The longest punishment in the family tradition had only been 30 minutes of attack. "Alex, let me ask you for the last time. Will you give up Debbie?" Lincoln glared at Alex. He felt that Alex had forced him into a desperate situation. He hoped that his grandson would give up the girl. Alex shook his head slowly and said, "Grandfather, I'm sorry. I've let you down." Lincoln's eyelids trembled, and his fists tightly clenched together. He angrily said, "Dexter, get ready!" Dexter hesitated a little as Alex prepared to face the attack by the group of strong men. Alex had once been considered so promising. Did Lincoln really want to be so cruel to him? But Dexter saw that Lincoln wasn't showing any sign of changing his mind, so he had to say, "Let's get ready." Since Alex had violated the Ambrose family tradition, he couldn't escape his punishment. He prepared to take his place on the floor to await the fighter's attack, but Flora held him back. Flora looked at Lincoln with tears in her eyes and begged, "Dad, Alexei is your grandson. 60 minutes of fighting might nearly kill him. Please let him go." Lincoln slightly clenched his hand on the table. He still looked at Dexter and said, "What are you waiting for? Do you not want to do it anymore?" The strong men prepared themselves and began to circle around Alex. "What's wrong with Alex's pursuit of the woman he likes?" A voice came from below. The speaker was Lincoln's 9th son, Tristan Ambrose. He stood up, walked to Alex's side, and said, "Alex, you've done nothing wrong. You don't need to be punished." "Tristan, are you really sticking your nose into this?" Lincoln was furious. After hearing Tristan speak, Nellie trembled all over and looked at him in surprise. Lincoln glared at Tristan and exuded fierce anger. He said, 20 years ago, you fooled around with some woman, and now you want Alex to learn from you? I didn't give you my blessing 20 years ago, and I'm not giving it to Alex now. I'm putting a stop to this. I do it for the sake of the Ambrose family." "Was it really that important to split us up? You said it was for my own good, but how did it help me? 16 years ago, she came from Brunei to Baltimore to look for me, but you made him lock me up." Tristan pointed toward Gideon. "You let the mother and daughter stay in their house and wait for 10 days until they finally left. You didn't let me see them once. Am I supposed to thank you? Tristan looked at Alex and said, Alex, don't listen to him, or you'll regret it for a lifetime, like me. Conan! Lincoln commanded as he clapped his hand on the table. Conan, who was standing behind him, rushed out toward Tristan. He grabbed his shoulder, stretched out his legs, and slapped him to the ground. Tristan cried out in pain as he fell to the ground. He roared, It was you who broke us up. Now I'm dying inside, and it's all because of you. Alex took the initiative to roll up his sleeves. He felt the situation had dragged on for too long. He was confident he could deal with the punishment. Even if he had to let Lincoln's men hit him a few times in order to satisfy his grandfather's anger, he knew he was strong enough to survive. He called out, I'm ready. Let's fight. Two of the strong men began to approach Alex. They would reach him in the next second. Stop it! Another charming voice shouted, and a figure quickly rushed toward Alex. It was Nellie. Tristan's heart moved as he saw Nellie, and he stood up. Something about her seemed very familiar. Get her! Conan pushed Tristan toward the two men and ran to Nellie. He knew she wasn't an Ambrose, so he used a move to hit her right shoulder. Nellie's martial arts skills were very weak. Conan's palm hit her right shoulder. She snorted and fell to the ground, with a trace of blood flowing out of her mouth. Conan rushed to Nellie and held her down. Who are you? Lincoln looked at Nellie. He didn't know how the girl got into the family estate. Who am I? My mother and I came to the U.S. to find this heartless man, and it turns out that you were the cause of it all. Nellie shouted as she looked at Lincoln fearlessly. What? You're Nellie? Tristan wanted to hear Nellie's voice and take a look at her. When his lover and their daughter had come to Baltimore to look for him, they had not met. But someone from the family had taken pictures of the pair to show him. Tristan recognized that she was his daughter. 20 years ago, when Tristan was a younger, less responsible man, he had visited Brunei. While there, he had gotten drunk and had a relationship with a cleaning girl in a hotel. He had only found out a few months later, when he visited her hometown, that she had gotten pregnant. Although Tristan had not been pleased to learn that she was a cleaning girl, he had felt a sense of responsibility to her and decided to stay with her. After several months together, he had fallen in love with her. The family had learned the news before the woman, Tallulah, had given birth. Lincoln had sent someone to take Tristan away and had left her $1 million in compensation. After she had given birth to Nellie, Tallulah had not forgotten about Tristan, and she had not understood why he had left. When Nellie was nearly 4 years old, she had taken Nellie to the U.S. in search of him. Tristan had once told her that he was from the Ambrose family in Baltimore. As soon as Tallulah had arrived in the U.S., she had found the family's house. But they had said there was no Ambrose family there. She had not believed them, so she had sat in front of the gate and waited, but nothing happened. Later, a man had taken them in to stay at his home. That man was Gideon. Alex's family had its own independent villa in Baltimore. Tallulah had continued to wait in front of the gate all day for 10 days. But she had still not seen any sign of Tristan. Discouraged and frustrated, she had taken Nellie back to Brunei. Tallulah had soon been cheated out of all her money. She had become very ill over the following year, and sadly, Nellie had been orphaned. She had wandered the streets alone until Zora had found her. She had brought Nellie to the palace in Brunei to serve as a maid. After recognizing Tristan, Nellie felt like crying, but she couldn't look at him. She couldn't believe that she had finally found her father. The Ambrose family was surprised. Over the years, Lincoln had sometimes thought about the mother and daughter who had visited from Brunei. After all, they were also the blood of the Ambrose family. It seemed a little cruel to have let them stay in Brunei. After seeing Nellie's eyes full of malice, Lincoln's anger dissipated, and he felt sorry for the poor girl. He saw from her appearance and eyes that she had suffered a lot over the years. "Come here, young lady," Lincoln called. He wanted to have a closer look at his granddaughter. "Don't you young lady me! I hate you!" yelled Nellie. She realized that it was Lincoln who had caused this tragedy. If it weren't for him, her mother probably wouldn't have died. Nellie exclaimed, "If you want to punish Alex, you'll have to get through me first." Episode 253, You're Out. When Tristan explained who Nellie was, Alex was surprised. If Nellie were Tristan's daughter, that would mean she was his cousin. He remembered that when he was a child, there had been a mother and daughter that had stayed with his family. He had not known at the time who they were, but when he was older, he had asked his parents about them. They had told him that they were the girlfriend and daughter of Uncle Tristan. He remembered his only contact with the pair. When he had finished playing outside, he had come back into the living room and had seen that an ugly little girl had damaged his toy plane. Alex had been very angry, so he had rushed to scold her. The girl had fought back, but Alex had been stronger, so the girl had started to cry. After that, the two visitors had stayed on the other side of the villa, and Alex had never seen them again. The little girl had been Nellie. He thought of everything that had happened since he had met Nellie in D.C., and what a coincidence their meeting had been in the first place. He remembered suspecting at times that Nellie had a crush on him. That felt silly now. He looked at Nellie and she gazed back at him calmly, giving him a small nod. Even in the middle of all these revelations about her family, she had still stepped up to support Alex in his time of need. More than ever, he appreciated her friendship and support. Lincoln hesitated. He really felt sorry for Nellie, but he had to punish Alex. Everyone was waiting for his decision. Lincoln thought for a moment and said, "No one can change my decision. If you don't want to accept the punishment, you can leave the Ambrose family. Only then will the punishment on your family be excused. You must decide on your own." The Ambrose family was shocked, and there was an uproar in the hall. This was even more serious than 60 minutes of attack. If he left, it would mean that Alex was no longer a member of the Ambrose family. The family would have nothing to do with him, and he would never have the chance to hold the position of the head of the family. Nathan was very happy when he heard this option. He hoped that Alex would quit. When the others heard Lincoln present this option, they wondered how Alex would decide.
They thought that Alex would rather be punished than quit the family. He had a good chance to become the head of the family, which would make him more powerful than even the leaders of some countries. Some people thought that Alex was foolish to make Lincoln angry for the sake of a mountain village girl. Everyone's eyes focused on Alex, who had paused to think. He finally stood up and slowly faced the crowd below. They all wondered what Alex was going to decide. He slowly turned to look at his extended family, then his parents, and finally he turned to face Lincoln. With a firm nod, he said, "Grandfather, I voluntarily quit the Ambrose family." He knew that he only had one path to take. Alex had spoken his decision quietly, but it shook the hearts of every Ambrose. Alex had always seemed to be one of Lincoln's particular favorites. It was shocking to see him quit the family. Nellie looked at Alex, and she knew that he must feel very bitter at that moment. "Fine." Lincoln looked at Alex. His eyes slowly welled up with tears, and the muscles on his face trembled. This was a rare expression from the old man. "If you have decided to quit, you can no longer stand here. You must pack up your things and leave. After you leave, no one will take care of you. Get out of here." Lincoln was really sad. Nothing like this had ever happened in the whole time he had led the family. "Goodbye, grandfather." Alex glanced at Lincoln, and then he went to say a few words to his parents, relatives, and friends. He then turned and walked out of the hall. Nellie wanted to follow him, but she was held back by Conan. "Nellie, let me look at you." Tristan pushed Conan away. He wanted to speak with his daughter and try to begin to make up for all the years he'd been prevented from meeting her. "Get out of here!" Nellie exclaimed angrily. She didn't look at Tristan. Her mother had told her the name of her father when she was a child, but Nellie hated him for his absence. As she grew older, Nellie imagined her father to be a heartless man. She had thought that one day when she found him, she would kill him. "Mom died because she missed you. Why did you leave us? You liar! I hate you!" "What? What do you mean?" Tristan was shocked and exhausted. He said in a mournful voice, "I'm sorry. I know I made you both suffer. It's all my fault, but the real culprit was him." Tristan pointed to Lincoln and pleaded, "I couldn't do anything about it back then. Could you please give me a chance to make it up to you? I'm your father." "Go away," she cried. Nellie hit Tristan with her fist, and then she raised her teary eyes to look at him. When she saw the deep love in his eyes, she couldn't bear it any longer. She threw herself into his arms and cried loudly, "Why didn't you want us? We were so miserable in Brunei with you." She had desperately wanted to have a father when she was a child. It was only now that she learned he had been in love with her mother, but Lincoln had been the reason they had been apart. "Dear daughter, it's good to have you back. I'll make the last 20 years up to you," Tristan said, hugging her and touching her soft hair. Although the atmosphere was depressing, the birthday party continued. After cutting the cake, Lincoln turned back to the inner hall to have a rest. Nathan's family was very happy. Marcus Ambrose took Nathan, raised his glass and said, "Well played. I understand now." Nathan looked at his father with a sneer. He neither clinked his glass nor answered. In his opinion, his father just wanted to boast about his victory. He wasn't a useful ally, and Nathan didn't want to talk to him. But Marcus did not take offense to his son's tacit rejection. He laughed awkwardly and took a sip from his glass alone. "Husband, let's go see Gideon and Flora," Marian Ambrose said, smiling. Marian enjoyed comparing herself with Flora. Since Flora's son had been expelled from the family, how could Flora argue with her now? Marian and Marcus walked to Gideon's table with their glasses of wine. Marian said, "Today's a good day. Let's toast it together." "What are you talking about?" Flora was on fire. Her son had been expelled from the family. Marian was deliberately humiliating her. "What's the matter? I said it's a good day because it's Dad's birthday." Marian wasn't willing to be outdone. Flora looked at Marian angrily. Gideon gently hugged her and whispered in her ear, "Don't be impulsive." If they caused any more trouble at the party, it would be very harmful to Lincoln. Marian smiled with pride. She sipped from her glass and said with a leisurely smile, "I like Alex very much because he competes with Nathan, which makes my son become better. But I didn't expect Alex to have so many problems. I'm just grateful my son is still on the right track." Flora looked very unhappy at Marian's words. "Marian, be reasonable. Alex can't be entirely blamed for this problem. You adults have some responsibility in it too. You should have taught him to prioritize his career over chasing some strange girl." Marcus laughed at Gideon. "Thank you for reminding me, but no one knows what's going to happen until the last minute, do they?" Gideon said. Although he was smiling, his heart felt mixed feelings. "Are you hoping that Alex can come back to the Ambrose family someday? You should give up that fantasy. No one has ever returned to the family after a scandal like this." Marcus grinned casually, and then looked at Gideon and Flora. He continued with a wretched smile. "But there's no harm in trying, I suppose. Maybe there's still a chance." Marcus and Marian just walked away smugly after they finished talking. Many family members gathered around Marcus and Marian. Before, they had been careful not to show too much preference to either Alex or Nathan. Since it was now clear that Nathan had the best chance of taking over the family, he naturally wanted to please them. Person after person toasted and flattered them. "Marcus, what a son you've raised." "Marian, you look beautiful today. By the way, don't you like jewelry? I bought a precious diamond in South Africa. I'll give it to you later." "Nathan is really capable. He has handled several orders of more than $1 million in a row, which is much better than us." Gideon and Flora didn't go over to their table to toast them. Only Justin Ambrose, Ken Stokes, and the butler, Mark Stevens, sat with them to try and comfort them. Finally, the banquet ended. Flora dialed Alex's phone and learned that he was at the airport. She rushed out to meet him. Alex had been waiting at the airport for 2 hours. Because he was no longer a part of the family, he had to leave that evening. The Moon Girls accompanied him, so he wouldn't feel so lonely. "Alexei!" His mother finally arrived. When Flora saw Alex, She threw herself into his arms with tears streaming down her cheeks. "You foolish boy! How could you do this?" Flora criticized her son. If Alex had been smarter, they wouldn't be in this situation that day. "Don't scold him now," Gideon said. Flora looked at her son with tears in her eyes and said, "Oh, I am proud of you. I'm just sad at how this has all turned out." "I know, but this is better than the other punishment," Alex joked. Although they couldn't laugh, their mood was a little calmer. "Whether you're recognized by the rest of the family or not, you're still my brother." Justin gently patted Alex's shoulder. "You're a good brother," Alex said with a faint smile. Episode 254. Where is Leona? Alex indicated his parents with his head and said to Justin, "Take care of them for me, please." "Of course, but we're not giving up on you. You'll be back in the family someday," Justin said confidently. After Justin finished speaking, the atmosphere went cold. They all knew no one had ever returned to the family after a scandal like this. "Mr. Stokes, Mr. Stevens, thanks for coming to see me off. I'm really sorry." Alex looked at Ken and Mark. In the competition between Alex and Nathan, they had taken Alex's side from the beginning. Now that Alex had left, Ken and his colleagues would surely be hit hard by Nathan. Ken and Mark shook their heads. They really liked Alex and were willing to follow him. "Everyone is here except for Nellie. He was so nice to her," muttered Celeste. The Moon Girls weren't particularly sad. In their opinion, his family was too strict. They thought Alex was better off getting some distance from them. "Nellie's with Uncle Tristan. They haven't seen each other for 20 years, so there must be a lot to talk about," Justin explained. Alex nodded and said, "Thank you all. It's been great to see you, but it's time for me to leave. Goodbye." He waved to everyone, turned around and walked toward the helicopter with the four maidens. They climbed into the helicopter. Soon it started and slowly rose into the air. Alex smiled and waved to his relatives on the ground. He saw that Gideon held his mother as she covered her face and sobbed. Justin turned his back, so he couldn't see if his brother was also in tears. Mark and Ken looked sad. The people on the ground gradually became smaller and smaller. Alex turned back from the window. He couldn't hold it in anymore, so he put his head down and began to cry. From that point forward, it would be very difficult for him to see his family again. "Mr. Alex?" The women began to whisper to each other. They had not realized that Alex was only pretending to be okay with how things had turned out. Now they saw how upset he truly was. They were uncomfortable and concerned for him. The four women surrounded Alex and gently comforted him. "Mr. Alex, you still have us. We'll never give up on you." "Yes, it'll be much better to have the four of us help you than to be in the Ambrose family. If you have any problems, please tell us. We'll listen quietly and help you feel better." Celine and Celeste gently patted Alex's back. Callisto took his hand. Luna knelt in front of him. Alex was all they had. With these 4 confidants around him, Alex felt better. "Thank you," he said as he slowly straightened up. He leaned back into his seat and slowly closed his eyes. He was very tired and wanted to sleep to forget about his troubles. Soon he fell asleep, and the 4 girls relaxed slightly. It was midnight and very cold. The helicopter was an older model with a leaky window. Alex shivered in his sleep. "Mr. Alex is very cold," Luna said as she discovered him shaking. "Let's embrace Mr. Alex together," Celeste said as she slightly frowned. Celeste and Celine hugged his upper body to help warm him up. "You two have a rest first. We'll hold him for a while, and then we can trade places," Celeste said. Callisto and Luna rested in their seats. To help warm him up, Celeste held Alex tightly. She opened her coat and covered as much of his chest as she could. Celine did the same on the other side. The maidens looked at each other, and then they looked at Alex. They felt very close to him, which brought them a sense of joy and excitement. When they each saw the other's smiling face, they blushed. Celeste and Celine closed their eyes, relaxing slightly. They both had the bold idea that they could always rely on Mr. Alex to help them. But they remembered that they were only maidens and not worthy of him. After the 7-hour flight, the helicopter landed at the airport. They were back in D.C. When the helicopter landed, the seats shook slightly. Alex opened his eyes and felt very warm. He noticed that Callisto and Luna had been hugging him and had covered his body with their coats. Alex was deeply moved by their gesture. Callisto and Luna also woke up. Their heads had been resting on his shoulders. They stood up right away, and their hearts were pounding with excitement. Looking at the women, Alex felt slightly happy. He had already regarded the Moon Girls as his family, especially since he no longer had other relatives. Celeste was the closest one to Alex. "Let's get out of here," he said as he looked at the 4 smiling women. Alex and Celeste stepped out of the helicopter. It was 7 in the morning, and the morning air was chilly. They had been flying all night, so they all felt cold and hungry. "Mr. Alex, let's have something to eat first," Celeste said, as she thought Alex must also be hungry. "I want to see Debbie as soon as possible," he said. But he realized the women must be hungry. He said, "But you're right, we should get some food first." "You're in a hurry to see Miss Debbie. We won't dare delay you," Celeste said. She saw a nearby breakfast shop and asked Callisto and Luna to buy enough for all of them. They soon returned, and Celeste said lightheartedly, "We can eat on the way there." Alex called for 2 taxis, and they left for Arlington Heights. In the taxi, Alex dialed Debbie's number and told her that he would be arriving soon. Debbie was worried. "I don't know what to do when I see Alex," she thought. At the same time, Reginald Drake finished his night shift and returned to the Drake's home. A few days ago, he had paid $1 million in medical fees to the families of the security guards who had been injured at the wedding. He still had more people to visit and apologize to. It was becoming difficult to discuss the incident without mentioning the Ambrose family, but he knew it was important to keep their involvement a secret. But with the support of the other powerful families in Washington, D.C., the matter was finally becoming resolved. The government only knew that someone had sabotaged the Drake family's wedding. The Drake family had ended the violence as quickly as possible. The public didn't know about these events. They all thought that the wedding between the Drake and Marvel families had gone well. The 20 Washington, D.C. families kept quiet. They were afraid if some news about the terrible Ambrose family were leaked, they would suffer dire consequences. Reginald went into the villa. He was very tired these days, but fortunately, everything was done. He wanted to take a good bath and sleep. "Dad, you're back. I called you last night. Why didn't you answer?" Seeing that his father was finally back, David rushed to Reginald. David's handsome face was full of panic and worry. "Yesterday I was having dinner with some important people and turned off my phone." Reginald's relaxed nerves tightened again. Why did his normally calm son look like this? He frowned and asked, "What's the matter?" David wanted to blurt out that Leona had found out her old diary and remembered her old life as Debbie. But when he tried to speak, he swallowed his words. After the botched wedding, Reginald had warned David to keep his distance from Leona. He had worried about the Ambrose family's interest in Leona, and felt it best that David not get too entangled with her, in case they needed to drop the whole marriage idea. But then Leona had come to David's room, wanting to spend time with him. He should have sent her away, but he was too tempted by her. He had not only let Leona into his room, but he had also wanted to take advantage of his father's absence to finally consummate their match. If he had not left Leona alone in his room while he went to get prepared, she wouldn't have seen the diary. "What's the matter? Just spit it out." When Reginald saw David's mood, his uneasiness sharply increased. He was acutely aware that it might be related to the Marvel girl. So he asked in a low voice, "What about the Marvel girl? You didn't touch her, did you?" "Dad, I'm sorry. Leona, she left," David finally said. His face looked even more depressed. "What? Why? What did you do?" Reginald said angrily. "No, Dad, I didn't touch her. She saw the diary, so she left," David said quickly. He felt uneasy and afraid of his father's anger. "Diary? What diary?" Reginald couldn't understand, so he roared, "What's going on? Tell me, right now." "Yes, the diary." His father's roar made David feel like an earthquake hit his heart. He said in a frightened voice, "Daryl Brennan gave me Leona's diary, the one she wrote in before she lost her memory. I used information from it to get closer to her. But she found out, and now I'm not sure what to do." David knew that if he went after her, she wouldn't listen to his explanation anyways. If Leona broke up with him, Alex might come back to take revenge on him too. When he remembered the battle at the wedding, David's heart shook with fear. He was flustered, so he had decided to discuss what to do with his father when he returned home. "You little bastard!" Reginald scolded. He did not understand the particulars, but it was clear that David had played some kind of trick on Leona. Alex had warned them before that if David didn't take good care of Leona, he would come to the Drake family to set things straight. If David and Leona's entire relationship had been based on some lie, then Alex was sure to return to wreak havoc on them. Reginald glared at David and said, "Do you have a head full of mush? This is a disaster. How could you have gone with such a stupid plan? If you weren't my son, I would kill you on the spot."
Episode 255. I'm sorry.
"Dad, I was wrong. What should I do?" David said worriedly. "You'll come back with me to the Marvel's house to talk with them. You better pray that you can get that Marvel girl back, or I'll take off both your legs," Reginald said, glaring at his son. David nodded. Leona had always respected him. If he came forward and said the right things, she would probably take him back. After she came back, he had to do everything he could to help her forget how he had used the diary to get close to her, so Alex wouldn't find out and bring disaster to his family. "Let's go now," David said. He felt more secure that his father was with him. They walked out of the gate and drove to Arlington Heights. Alex got out of the taxi. Debbie was waiting at the gate to Arlington Heights with Lindsay and Charles Marvel. As soon as their eyes met, Debbie looked elated. She gazed at him as though she had many things to say to Alex. Alex's heart thumped. Her manners seemed more like the Debbie he remembered. It seemed like she really had finally remembered who she was. Debbie broke away from Lindsay to run toward him. Alex was happy and opened his arms as he ran toward Debbie. They embraced and spun around several times until they finally stopped. Looking at his familiar face, Debbie thought about what she had done to him. Her heart was filled with remorse. She whispered, "I'm sorry. "No need. You don't have to say anything," he interrupted her. He was so happy that she could finally remember the past and that she recognized him again. He looked down at her and thought she had never looked more beautiful. He slowly bent down and kissed her lips. She closed her eyes and slowly returned his kiss. It felt comfortable and familiar to her. Another lost memory recovered. Watching Alex and Debbie kiss each other, Lindsay felt envious. She remembered that when she had first met Alex, she had also stood up on tiptoe to kiss him, but he had rejected her. It would be impossible for her to try to kiss him again. Lindsay suddenly realized that she had started to tear up. Although the four maidens were also envious, they were happy for Alex. Several of the security guards standing nearby were still under the impression that Alex was just some poor boy of no importance. They looked at him and were puzzled and jealous. "Alex is a little loser that sells pancakes. How did he catch a girl like Miss Marvel?" they wondered. These security guards had met 7 or 8 famous young men from Washington, D.C. that had tried to pursue Miss Marvel, but she had rejected them all. "What does she see in him?" they thought. A Porsche stopped at the gate. Reginald and David got out of the car. The 2 men rushed to the Marvel's house. They had to persuade Leona to return home with them. If Alex found out that Leona had run away because of David's deception, it would be a disaster for the Drake family. On the way to the Marvel's house, Reginald had even told David that if Leona wouldn't agree to return home with him, he would have to kneel and apologize to her. No matter what method he used, he had to get her to come back. When they got out of the car, they saw Alex and Leona kissing each other. They were stunned. When the pair stopped kissing, the men took a step towards them, fearing the worst. They wondered how much Leona had already told Alex, and what he would do to take revenge on them. Alex was from the Ambrose family, who were immensely powerful. If he wanted to punish the Drake family, it would be easy for him. Alex and Debbie barely noticed them. They looked at each other for a long time and felt a special happiness. Charles Marvel walked towards Alex and Debbie. He touched them both gently on the shoulder, drawing their attention over to Reginald and David. When Alex turned to look at them, both of the Drake men trembled. David's knees buckled, and he fell to the ground. Alex was quite puzzled. He took Debbie's hand and walked over to them. Lindsay and the 4 Moon Maidens followed behind him. "Mr. Drake?" Alex saw that Reginald and David were looking at them. He had been so happy that he had forgotten about the interrupted wedding ceremony between Leona and David just a few days ago. He was just about to ask them why they were staring at him. Reginald said to Alex, "The Drake family has done something wrong. David and I must apologize to you and Miss Leona. We are happy to accept whatever punishment you think is necessary." Reginald glared down at David. Looking up at them all, David said, "Mr. Alex, I was wrong. Daryl gave me Debbie Stonehill's diary. It was his idea to use details from the diary to get close to Leona. Please forgive me. Please." It was a complicated story, and David was too scared and upset to explain himself fully. Debbie pulled on Alex's sleeve and told him that she had seen her diary in David's bedroom the previous day. Alex realized that she wasn't angry with David. "David, stand up," Alex said. Reginald and David looked at each other. They didn't understand what Alex meant. They knew their actions had caused the pair a great deal of harm, yet Alex sounded so calm. Alex and Debbie looked at each other and couldn't help but smile a little at each other. Debbie walked to David and helped him up. She said, "I should thank you, David. If it wasn't for you, I might not have remembered the previous events." They were surprised and a little relieved, but they couldn't understand what she had remembered. "Because I saw the diary, I remembered the past. David, I'm sorry. We can't go through with this match. You're not the one I love," Debbie said as she looked at him. David was reluctant to give her up. He had been envious of Leona's beauty for a long time. He had gone to a lot of trouble pursuing her, and he hated to think that he had wasted his time and energy trying to get her to love him. Reginald touched David and gave him a meaningful look. Reluctantly, David nodded and said, "Okay, if that's what you want." Debbie walked back to Alex. Alex smiled and said to Reginald, "This time, Debbie and I can get back together." "Debbie?" Reginald asked. "Her name is Debbie," Alex said, touching her shoulder. Are you really the Alex you wrote about in that diary? David asked. He had not made the connection before, but now he finally understood. That was me, yes, Alex said. He was in a very happy mood. Thank you so much for opening up to us, Alex, Reginald said humbly. Or should I call you Mr. Ambrose? I'm no longer part of the Ambrose family, Alex said quietly. Reginald was puzzled, but he didn't dare ask what he meant. He simply said goodbye and left with his son. Debbie, let's go for a walk, Alex said. Debbie was his greatest happiness at that moment, and he wanted to be alone with her. I'd like that, she said, smiling. He walked to the roadside and hailed a taxi. He was so distracted that he had forgot to even say goodbye to the Moon Maidens as he and Debbie left. Watching the taxi drive away, the four women were very happy for him. Alex was no longer sad. His smile was their greatest happiness. But Lindsay felt very lonely. She wanted to be happy for Debbie and Alex, but she felt horribly let down by the whole situation. Alex had not looked at her once. She felt as if she didn't exist. Alex and Debbie arrived at Westlake. She took his arm and they walked by the water. We have never walked like this before. It's really nice to walk like this together. He sighed and placed his hand on the back of her hand. We'll take lots of walks together like this from now on. Debbie looked at him with hope in her eyes. Good. Yes, we should. Alex started to remember that on the night of her disappearance, Lou Rourke, who had kidnapped her, once said that he had had relations with Debbie in the hotel. Whenever he thought about it, Alex felt a deep pain in his heart. Debbie, the night you went missing, I'm sorry. I should have picked you up at the airport, and then you wouldn't have been picked up by Lou. He took you to the hotel room. Alex couldn't go on, but he managed to blurt out a few more words. But don't worry. Lou is dead. She remembered that she had been kidnapped by Lou. Unexpectedly, Alex had killed him. She was unaware that this had happened, but his words seemed to be about something else that was on his mind. She pulled him closer and said, Alex, what's wrong? Debbie, whenever I think about this, I feel very sad. His eyes revealed his guilty feelings. She understood what he meant. She blushed a little and said angrily, Alex, you mean that you think I was... He was stunned and looked at her serious expression. He was overjoyed and said, Debbie, are you saying nothing happened? Yes, nothing like that happened, she said shyly. Her face turned red as she lowered her head. Alex felt joy. He hugged her close and said, Debbie, I'm so relieved. I was worried he had hurt you. I love you so much.
Thank you for listening to Crown TV. Please don't forget to subscribe, share and turn on the notification button.